Some films explode onto the screen, others sneak in quietly, only to take over our lives years later. Office Space 1999 did exactly that, transforming from a box office afterthought into the ultimate workplace cult classic. Behind the dry humor, TPS reports, and that legendary red stapler, there's a wild backstory you've never heard, full of studio sabotage, bizarre casting choices, props that changed real companies, and hidden inspirations from centuries-old literature. Today, we're diving deep into 20 weird facts you didn't know about Office Space. And trust me, by the end, you'll never look at your cubicle the same way again. The title alone, Office Space, was enough to make studio executives shift uncomfortably in their seats when Mike Judge pitched it to 20th Century Fox. They didn't hear satire, they heard boredom, too plain, too forgettable. Too much like something you'd see printed on the cover of a fax machine instruction manual. They wanted something flashier, a title that could ride the coattails of There's Something About Mary, the studio's recent comedy sensation. But Mike Judge stood firm. The dullness was deliberate. The beige, uninspired name wasn't a flaw. It was the joke. It was a subtle wink to the monotony the film was skewering. To change it would be to miss the point entirely. The refusal had consequences. The marketing budget was gutted. Press screenings were scrapped. Some insiders whispered that the studio quietly buried the film out of spite. For Mike Judge, it felt like sabotage. For the movie, it was oddly poetic. Here was a story about corporate mediocrity, and it was being suffocated by corporate mediocrity. The irony? The only reason Office Space ever made it to production was because of an entirely different kind of comedy in 1998. There's Something About Mary had shattered expectations at the box office, and studios were desperate for the next big irreverent hit. Somewhere in the search, an executive remembered a strange little cartoon from MTV's Liquid Television, a short about a mumbling, bespectacled man obsessed with a red stapler. His name was Milton, and Mike Judge had based him on an actual co-worker from his engineering days, the kind of man who could be quietly wrong for years without anyone noticing. The crude, minimalist cartoon had aired in 1991 and even appeared on Saturday Night Live. By the time Office Space was greenlit, Milton had been enduring animated abuse for a decade, and when Stephen Root finally brought him to life, hunched over, mumbling, clutching that stapler like a lifeline, he became more than a character. He became the spirit of every overlooked, undervalued employee who'd been pushed to the edges of the office and forgotten. There was also a strange literary connection. In 1853, Herman Melville published Bartleby, the Scrivener, the story of a quiet office worker who one day simply refused to do his job, answering every request with, "I would prefer not to." The parallels were impossible to ignore. In Office Space, Peter Gibbons doesn't storm out or make a scene after a botched hypnosis session. He simply stops caring. Like Bartleby, his rebellion is quiet, almost unsettling, and far more dangerous to the system than outright defiance. Casting Peter wasn't easy. Early on, Louis C.K. was considered. He had the deadpan delivery, the weary eyes, the right kind of cynicism. But something wasn't clicking. Then came Ron Livingston. No flash, no ego. He simply looked like he belonged. In a cubicle, Mike Judge didn't want someone acting tired. He wanted someone who was tired. And Ron Livingston was perfect. The rest of the cast came together in equally unusual ways. Gary Cole's iconic portrayal of Boss Bill Lumbergh came from an old boss's voice he used to imitate between takes. When Mike Judge heard it, he knew instantly this was the sound of every passive-aggressive manager in America. Dedrick Bader's laid-back neighbor Lawrence was based on someone he'd grown up with in Texas, complete with mullet and slow drawl. Even Stephen Root's Milton almost didn't happen. His first audition was too loud, too clear. Milton was supposed to be invisible, someone people overlooked. Out of desperation, Root hunched over, stared at the floor, and mumbled, "I believe you have my stapler." In that moment, Milton came to life. Not every casting choice followed the original plan. The studio wanted a recognizable star for commercial appeal, so Mike Judge wrote in a love interest for Peter that led to Jennifer Aniston. At the height of her fame from Friends, she was eager to break away from glamorous roles and welcomed the chance to wear a polyester uniform and play a waitress at a kitschy chain restaurant. That fictional restaurant, Tchotchke's, was a direct parody of TGI Fridays in the film. Her character's boss harps on her about flair, the colorful pins and buttons she's required to wear. It was a savage commentary on forced corporate cheerfulness. Years later, TGI Fridays quietly removed flair from their uniforms, and employees admitted it was because of Office Space. The set wasn't a Hollywood fabrication. The crew salvaged desks, chairs, and cubicle dividers from abandoned office buildings in Dallas. The stale air, the faded carpets, the limp plants, they were all real. The cast didn't have to fake the exhaustion. The building did it for them. One scene, though, became legend: the printer destruction. Mike Judge told the actors to imagine the machine had ruined their lives. They didn't need imagination. With Ghetto Boys blasting in the background, they smashed the printer to pieces in a field, channeling years of pent-up workplace rage. Not every planned storyline survived. Orlando Jones was initially cast as a sarcastic office worker, but by the final cut, he'd been reduced to a single scene as a door-to-door or magazine salesman. It was an oddly fitting fate in a movie about people being erased. Even the most famous prop, the cherry red swing-line stapler, didn't exist at the time. The props department spray-painted a black stapler so it would stand out on screen. After the movie's DVD success, Swingline began manufacturing real red staplers due to overwhelming demand. In theaters, Office Space made just under $13 million. It seemed destined for obscurity. But when the DVD hit shelves, something unexpected happened. College students, tech workers, and bored employees passed it around like a secret. The cult following grew so strong that the studio approached Mike Judge about turning it into a sitcom. He refused. For him, Office Space was a personal rebellion, not a formula. A weekly series would strip away what made it powerful. Even the film's ending was something Judge later questioned. Peter escapes his office job and finds satisfaction working construction. It tied things up neatly. Maybe too neatly. In hindsight, Judge wished he'd left it more open-ended. The goal wasn't for Peter to swap one job for another. It was for him to find true freedom. The strangest twist: corporate America embraced the movie. CEOs quoted it during meetings. Executives gave it as gifts. One even told Mike Judge, "We have that guy in our office too," missing the point entirely. The satire meant to expose the system had been co-opted by the system itself. But for millions of viewers, Office Space became more than just a comedy. It was validation. In the end, Office Space didn't explode into theaters. It slipped quietly into history, just like Milton in the corner. It gave us unforgettable characters, endless quotes, and the courage to say, "I'd prefer not to." If this story made you smile, laugh, or remember your own cubicle days, hit that like button. Share this video and keep the rebellion and the red stapler alive. Thanks for watching.